Hello, grade 5s. Welcome to day 2. Hopefully yesterday went well for you, and if you're still confused, definitely email your teacher and let us know that you need some extra support. Today's lesson will be much shorter. Our learning goal today is to write expressions using variables. Let's look at some examples together. Okay, Mrs. Pringle has 4 more pens than yesterday. Let's start with what we know and what we don't know. What we don't know is how many pens I started with. What we do know is that I now have 4 more pens than I did yesterday. Because we don't know how many I started with, we don't know how many I will have in total. Therefore, we cannot use an equation, we can only use an expression. I can use an expression with a variable to represent this. The variable will represent the number we don't know, which is how many pens I started with. Let's look at the operation we're going to be using. The operations can be addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. It says I have 4 more. What does more mean? Well, it means to add 4 or plus 4. So my variable is the number of pens I started with yesterday. That's what this n represents. I could have started with 10 pens yesterday. I could have started with 40 pens. I could have had 3 pens. I could have had no pens. But the operation is to 4 more, to add 4. I have 4 more than yesterday, so I could have started with 10. If I started with 10, now I'd have 14. If I started with none, now I would have just 4. Let's look at another example together. Hudson has 3 less snacks than yesterday. What do we know? He has 3 less than before. What don't we know? How many he had yesterday. So 3 less. What does less mean? Is it add, subtract, multiply, or divide? 3 less would mean to subtract. We're going to use the variable to represent what we don't know. This n represents the number of snacks that he had yesterday. This minus 3 represents that he has 3 less than he did yesterday. How sad for Hudson. We don't know what it equals because I don't know how many snacks he had yesterday. If he had 5 snacks yesterday, minus 3, then he would have 2 left, but he could have had 8 snacks yesterday, or he could have had only, 3 snacks, meaning he had no snacks today. So we use this variable to represent the unknown part. Let's look at one more example together. Mr. Pringle has 5 times as many bags of salt than he did yesterday. So I've already revealed the answer, but let's still work at what we don't know. We don't know how many bags of salt he had yesterday. What do we know? Well, today he has 5 times as many. What is the operation? Well, times is basically telling us the word. It's to multiply. It's another way we say to multiply. So this n here represents the number of bags he had yesterday. We don't know how many it is. This operation times 5 is showing us that today he has 5 times as many as he did yesterday. In grade 5, we can write our algebraic expressions with multiplication like this. N, or your variable, times 5. The reason we don't want to use x is because it's very confusing, right? If I had x times 5, the two x's look exactly the same, the multiplication x and the x, so it becomes kind of confusing. One way that people get around that, in algebra, we don't actually use the times symbol. So in grade 5, it's okay to use this, but in real algebra, they would write a multiplication sentence like this, 5n. They just attach the variable to the number, and that in algebra, that means that you multiply them. There's also another way of writing division so that that's less confusing, but we'll get to that later. So in grade 5, you can do both options. You can do the variable times the digit, or if you're feeling like you're ready for a challenge, you can attach the two together. Let's look at what your work is going to be today. This is what today's work will look like. You're going to be practicing writing expressions using a variable. It will be helpful if you underline the keywords that tell you what operation to do, like I did. At the end, you are also going to be writing 4 problems of your own. Of course, you cannot switch with a partner like you would have in class. Instead, we're asking you to teach one of your parents and have them complete it or post it on your blog. I look forward to seeing what problems you come up with.